The night was never meant to happen. Emily Carter stepped into the grand ballroom of the Blackwood Hotel, her heart pounding. The chandeliers sparkled like a million tiny stars, the air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and champagne. She didn't belong here, not among the billionaires and elite, but desperation had led her to borrow a designer dress and slip past security. Tonight was her last chance. Jobless, broke, and on the verge of eviction, she needed an opportunity. Anything. That's when she saw him, Damian Blackwood. Mysterious, commanding, and dangerously handsome. He stood in the shadows, nursing a glass of whiskey, his dark eyes locked onto hers. The intensity sent a shiver down her spine. "Lost?" he asked, his deep voice melting the last of her defenses. She should have walked away. Instead, she smiled. One drink turned into two. A slow dance led to whispered confessions, and when he pulled her close, every warning in her mind faded. That night, beneath the city lights, Emily made the one mistake that would change her life forever, falling into bed with a stranger. A man she would soon discover was a billionaire tycoon, and the father of her unborn children. The morning after felt like a dream, until Emily woke up alone. The silk sheets were cold, the space beside her empty except for a neatly folded note on the nightstand. Some nights are meant to be forgotten. Her heart sank. No name, no number, just a reminder that last night was never meant to last. With a heavy sigh, Emily dressed and left the luxurious penthouse suite, pushing away the sting of regret. It was a mistake, one she had to forget. But fate had other plans. 6 weeks later, Emily sat in the cramped bathroom of her tiny apartment, staring at the pregnancy test in disbelief. Positive. Her hands trembled. Not one, not two. 4 babies. Quadruplets. Panic gripped her. She was barely surviving, struggling to pay rent and find steady work. How could she raise 4 children alone? Tears welled in her eyes, but she steeled herself. She would do this, alone, if she had to. Determined, Emily sent out dozens of job applications, hoping for a miracle. And then one arrived, an assistant position at Blackwood Enterprises. She had no idea she was walking straight back into the life of the man who had left her that night. The moment their paths crossed again, everything would change. Emily adjusted her blazer and took a deep breath before stepping into the towering Blackwood Enterprises building. The interview had gone surprisingly well, and now she was officially hired. This job was her last hope, a stable income to prepare for the 4 little lives growing inside her. But the moment she walked into the CEO's office, her heart nearly stopped. Damian Blackwood, the man who had disappeared after that night, the father of her unborn children, and her new boss. She froze, hoping he wouldn't recognize her, but as his sharp eyes met hers, there was no flicker of recognition. Nothing. To him, she was just another employee, relief mixed with disappointment. He didn't remember her. He didn't know. Weeks passed, and Emily worked hard to stay unnoticed, but fate wasn't on her side. One afternoon, stress and exhaustion took their toll. Her vision blurred, and before she could react, darkness swallowed her. She woke up in the company's private medical wing, Damian standing over her, arms crossed, face unreadable. "The doctor said you're pregnant," he said flatly. Her pulse pounded. "It's none of your business," she whispered. But something in his expression shifted. A muscle clenched in his jaw as his gaze dropped to her stomach. "Who's the father?" Silence. Emily's lips trembled, but she refused to answer. Damian wasn't stupid. He connected the dots. His entire body tensed, realization hitting him like a storm. "Is it mine?" His voice was low, dangerous. Tears burned in her eyes, but she lifted her chin. Would it even matter? For the first time, she saw emotion crack through his cold mask. Shock, confusion, something almost like pain. "We need a DNA test," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Emily knew there was no escaping the truth now, and when the results came back, confirming what she already knew, everything would change forever. The DNA test results arrived the next morning. Emily sat stiffly across from Damien in his penthouse office, her hands clenched in her lap. He read the document in silence, his face unreadable. Then, slowly, he placed it on the desk and looked up. "It's true," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "They're mine." Emily swallowed hard. She had prepared herself for this moment, but nothing could have braced her for the storm brewing in his eyes. "You should have told me," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "You didn't even remember me," she shot back. "Why would I believe you'd care?" Damien exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through his hair. "You think I wouldn't have cared?" His jaw clenched. "Do you know what you've done, Emily? You kept my children from me." Emily stood abruptly. "I didn't keep them from you. I didn't even have the chance. You walked away that night, left nothing behind, and when I saw you again, you didn't recognize me." Silence hung between them, thick with tension. Then Damien's expression hardened. "If you think I'm going to let my children grow up without me, you're mistaken." Emily's stomach twisted. "What are you saying? I want full custody." Her breath caught in her throat. "You can't be serious." "You're barely making ends meet," he said coldly. "I can give them everything, security, education, a future. Can you?" Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "They need me, Damien, not just money. A father isn't just a paycheck." Damien's face darkened, but before he could speak, the door burst open. Victoria Blackwood, his mother. The elegant, ice-cold matriarch strode in, her sharp gaze cutting straight to Emily. "So this is the woman who trapped my son," she said smoothly. Emily stiffened. "I didn't trap anyone." Victoria's lips curled into a smirk. "Of course you did. But don't worry, dear. You and your children won't be a problem for much longer." Damien's expression flickered with unease. "Mother." "I'm handling this, Damien," she interrupted, then turned back to Emily. "How much will it take for you to disappear?" Emily's breath hitched. "I'm not for sale, and neither are my children." Victoria's smile vanished. "Then you've made a terrible mistake." Emily felt a chill of fear. She had expected a fight with Damien. She hadn't expected a war with his entire family. But she wasn't backing down. "If you try to take my babies from me," she said quietly, "I will fight you with everything I have." For the first time, something flickered in Damien's gaze. A hint of doubt. Victoria scoffed. "You'll lose." Emily lifted her chin. "We'll see." She turned and walked out, her heart pounding. Because no matter what it took, she would protect her children, even if it meant taking on the Blackwoods themselves. Emily spent the next few weeks preparing for the worst. She consulted lawyers, worked extra hours, and made sure her unborn children would have everything they needed. But deep down, fear gnawed at her. She was fighting one of the most powerful families in the country, alone. Then, one evening, there was a knock at her door. She opened it to find Damien standing there, looking exhausted, his usual confidence replaced with something she couldn't quite read. "We need to talk," he said. Emily crossed her arms. "If it's about custody, my answer hasn't changed." His gaze softened. "It's not about that." A pause, then quieter. "I was wrong." Emily blinked, unsure she'd heard him right. Damien exhaled. "I let my mother control everything in my life. I let my past define me. But when you walked away, I realized something. I don't want to win a legal battle. I want you. I want our family." Emily's heart pounded. "What about your mother?" He ran a hand through his hair. "I told her to back off. She doesn't own my future. I do. And I want you in it." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. After everything, after all the hurt and fear, this was the moment she had never dared to hope for. "Do you mean that?" she whispered. Damien stepped closer, gently placing a hand on her growing belly. "I do. I want to be here. For them. For you." A tear slipped down her cheek, and this time she let him wipe it away. For the first time in months, she let herself believe. Moral: love isn't about power or wealth. It's about trust, forgiveness, and choosing each other even in the darkest times.